Hello Everhouse, I'm Konrad and this is Seth's house. So this is an apartment in a block that my brothers and I had built inside the house where we grew up. The name of the house was Seth's house, and my mother always used to tell us, that Satis comes from the word satisfied, to be satisfied. It is the house that Miss Havisham lived in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. She also used the story to convince us that in life we shouldn't cling to the past like Miss Havisham had done. And I still remember it to this day. The composition is based on a central element, which is the kitchen counter, which will contain a number of functions. There's a cupboard, which is ventilated, where I put all my old books. There's a glazed vitrine as you enter, which will serve as a bar, where I intend to put some interesting objects that need to be examined from close by. So while you're getting your drink, you can launch yourself into another world by just looking at the detail of these objects. And a breakfast table which can double up as a DJ stand for when I have outdoor parties on the terrace. When designing interior space, you've got to understand the qualities. So this apartment had one very long space. It ended up with the danger of looking a bit tunnel-like, with light coming in from both ends. So to kind of balance that, I decided to use brass, which will make up for the darker spot. Hence, the dark color of the central station is balanced by almost a light source. The whole length of the apartment is equipped with waist-high storage cupboards. And then I've also replicated the paneling, which is creating a wall inside the bedroom on the outside to provide continuity with the typical paneling of the end of the 18th century and all throughout the 19th century. So it gives an idea of something which is new and old at the same time. Another reason why perhaps this begins to feel a bit like home is that I salvaged some of the old elements which belong to the period. So 1899, more or less when the house was built, was the Belle Epoque, where the applied arts became very sophisticated and developed. And even the carpentry of this particular house was interesting. There was the typical, what were called concertina doors of the period, which were sculpted. And I salvaged those doors and I converted them into the doors to the bathroom connected to wardrobes. I've also a number of pieces of furniture which again were lying around in my mum's house and which I had restored and which all have a history which make the interior interesting from my point of view. It's a collection of past events and happenings that make you change, which is what life is about, because for as long as there's life, there's change, and if there's no change, then that's when you know you're dead. An old desk, which belonged to my granduncle and probably belonged to his uncle, which I took to the restorer, and when I went to pick it up, he said, I found these things in the drawer. Visiting cards from my uncle who used to work in Ethiopia. I have a statue which I believe could have belonged to Mr. Francia, who was president of the Chamber of Commerce. Another element were the sculpted lions which were on the roof. One of them had been destroyed by, was a young boy really. One day decided to throw a rope over the neck of the lion and then pulled it down. Actually it broke, so had them restored and now they form part of the terrace. I decided to paint it the color of Roman terraces because that's part of my life. So it brings back a feeling of the excitement I felt when I went there in 1983. It was like going to New York. today, we tend to forget that the ceiling is an important element. So when the ceiling was built and I saw the textures which were created by the light streaming in from the front, I thought that although it doesn't represent anything, it still creates interest. In fact, it's quite odd. It's just a rough ceiling, but most people come in and say, well, I really like the ceiling. In a way, it was a bit of an experiment, but it kind of works. Most of the artwork here has a story connected a bit to my life. The drawing of chairs and a bottle on a bright sunny day is by a friend of mine called Madeline Fennick, and it's kind of very minimalist, and it kind of gives this feeling of overexposure on a bright day. There's also a drawing which formed part of my thesis when I was studying at university. My project was about reviving Valletta way back in the 70s. Nobody wanted to live in Valletta. And it was about how to inject new life in what was one of the most beautiful cities of Europe at the time. When Valletta was built, it was more progressive and its infrastructure was more developed than Paris and London. My office is specialized in restoration, and since then we started doing a lot of work on Valletta, like the Baracca lift, the Valletta waterfront. We worked on the Parliament building with Renzo Piano. We're now doing the extension to the Museum of St. John's. We're restoring the steeple of the Anglican Cathedral. So we've done a lot of work on Valletta, and now we've kind of associated ourselves with the town. When I came back from Rome, it was the only place which reminded me of an Italian city. So although these apartments are not connected in any shape or form with the layout of the original house, the overall dimensions are the same. The sun rises and sets in the same position. And both my brothers, who are not architects, told me it's really odd when I go to the apartment, I feel like I'm at home. And I was feeling exactly the same thing. So in a way, with all the negative qualities that developments conjure up in our heads, it's as though we've come back home. And I must say that we're all extremely happy to be able to return to our beginnings.
Subscribe to the Everhouse channel by clicking on the logo to receive updates on our latest episodes. If you have a project we could feature, get in touch with us at everhouse.co.